Oh no, I think I fixed it. I'm so sorry. I had you guys on the hook there for a second. I'll kind of repeat what I was saying. But basically, I wanted to say thank you for taking time to let me rest up my voice. I'm really excited to be back and talking to you guys about cocktails and cocktail history. So today I'm going to be doing a Hot Toddy and an Amaretto Sour. And the thing that I like about both of these drinks is that they're both pretty much blank canvases when it comes to what you can do with them. I feel like, whether you want to change the spirit, add a juice, or change the spices, there's so much room for that. And I do not know what is going on with this really sappy music. This is so extra. Let's get rid of that. Oh, terrible. All right, so I'm gonna start with the Hot Toddy just because I feel like it's gonna be way, way better for my throat. All right, sorry about that. Always a technical difficulty at some point. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to be doing the Hot Toddy first just because it's something I can sip on as I talk. I might get a little more hoarse, so I thought that would be really great. But before I do that, let's jump over and talk about what I'm going to be using. All right, so today I'm going to be using Luxardo Amaretto. I prefer this over Di Serono. I just feel like Di Serono is a little too sweet for my taste, and I like to be able to add sweetness in as opposed to like having to fight how sweet a drink is before you even add anything else. So for me, Luxardo's great. Also pairs really well with Luxardo cherries. If you've never had them, they're incredible. They make them cheap store Marciano cherry look like garbage. So my philosophy is if your cherries aren't black, they're probably not good. Definitely an overstatement, but for me, they're my favorite. All right, so Amaretto. So one of the things that we're going to be doing different, the Amaretto Sour has kind of a funny history. In terms of the drink itself, it was really popular like right around the late 60s up until the early 80s. Really had its heyday in the 70s. And it was just amaretto, lemon juice, sugar, egg white. If you've ever had that, it's a little too sweet for me. It's not super interesting. It's the lemon juice just barely helps cut the sweetness of the amaretto out. So what I like to do, which is not my idea, but is to add some whiskey, specifically bourbon. And I like rye bourbon a lot. You'll see me pull this all the time because it's like, I don't know, this is just, it's drinkable in every sense of the word. I mean, like you put it in a drink, you want to drink it neat. It's so good. So this is what we're going to be using today for our Amaretto Sour. Now the Amaretto Sour, it was actually fixed by a guy named Jeffrey Morgenthaler, I think is his name. He's a cocktail specialist, wrote books on like essential cocktails, and he sort of fixed the Amaretto Sour. He's the one who kind of came up with the idea of adding a bourbon to help influence the drink into a more positive direction for a modern audience. So now those were our two main spirits in our Amaretto Sour. I'm gonna try something. I may or may not. Maybe I'll do it on the back end, but because I don't eat eggs, I'm going to be trying maybe using some aquafaba, which is the juice that comes from canned beans, and I'm all out of chickpea juice, so I might try a really light kidney bean juice and see if that's okay. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to test it first in a small batch and see how it goes. It'll probably be terrible, but you never know. Maybe it'll be great, and that'd be awesome because I have like 1,000 more cans of kidney beans. So I feel like you can easily check real quick to see how it's going to look. I'll switch over to the detail camera here. Oh, it's dark and murky. There's no way that's going to be good. I can't even imagine. Let's just do a bar spoon just for like sick, experimenting. It's like medicine. Actually, there's not much flavor to that. and it's a little murky, but that murkiness is probably not going to show up in an Amaretto Sour, especially with how small we're going to use. I still think I'm going to try it without first. Not bad. I was expecting way worse. It actually, I think, might be less obtrusive than the chickpea juice. I find sometimes chickpea juice is like, boom, you can like really notice it. All right. Throw this over here. So that will be for our Amaretto Sour. We're going to use Amaretto, whiskey, might use some aquafaba, and then we're going to add, I think, a tiny bit of a simple syrup. So let's see. I think I've got that pulled out. I'm just using Collins simple syrup, but you can make this stuff at home. 1-to-1 sugar, water. You can use different sugars. In this case, white refined granulated sugar is what's going to give you your clear. If you want something that's more rich and molassesy, you can use darker, like Demerara or Turbinado sugars. Turbinado is going to be kind of mid-range between a white refined. Demerara is going to be a little more dark and molassesy. I've never made a brown sugar syrup. I'm sure you could, but anyone ever done that? Leave me a comment. Let me know. Who's saying this is lewd? Oh, Chase. Okay. All right. So in terms of the hot toddy, we have a couple options. For those of you who are not aware, the hot toddy is a pretty old drink. The hot toddy is pretty simple. It's usually just hot bourbon, water, and usually a bit of lemon peel, just like twisted to get the oils out, and dropped in. I like my toddies a little more interesting than that. I like to drop in cinnamon, clove, and I often like to put a healthy amount of lemon juice. Maybe that makes it not a toddy anymore, but you tell me. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's delicious, and it's more. Again, I'm always looking for something interesting to spice up. What I'm getting out of a drink. You know, I'm not a person who likes to drink just to have the feeling or a buzz. For me, it's always about experiencing a flavor. So I'm always going to want to experiment and play with a drink as opposed to just go real simple all the time. It's one of the reasons that, like, I'm not the biggest martini fan. I love a good martini, but I'd rather have a twist on a martini, something that's interesting and different, you know, because I want to try it. You know, I want to see what it can do. All right. I'm going to go ahead and grab the hot water real quick, and then we'll jump in and start mixing up that hot toddy. First up, I'm going to be using this as my hot toddy glass. It doesn't have a handle on it, so I'm going to mix it up. Hopefully it doesn't shatter into a million pieces. If it does, I'm sure it'll make great content for YouTube in a clip down the road. But I'm going to go ahead and use this, and that'll give it time to cool down. And when it's ready to touch, it'll probably be pretty good to start sipping on. It's kind of I don't know if it's true or not, but I once heard that that's the reason Japanese mugs don't have handles on them. It's too hot to touch. It's too hot to drink. That sounds like something an American said about Japanese people, but I like the saying all the same, and it tends to ring true. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this here. Let me grab our hot water, and we will get started. Ooh, I feel like the music today is just all over the place. Let's put the prayers out that it gets better, right? Okay. I have my show notes over here. All right, so we're gonna start with really simple 2 ounces of Bulleit bourbon rye whiskey. Oh, the sound. One of the things that I like about Bulleit rye whiskey is that the rye gives it a sweet flavor without being actually overly sweet. That really balances out the bourbon itself. I enjoy all types of bourbons and whiskeys, but in terms of just pure like year to year drinkability, this stuff, I'm not sponsored. I wish I was. All right, so let's do 2 of these. We're going to throw them right in. You've seen me use a shaker. I'm actually barely going to use a shaker today at all. Let's go ahead and move that over to our detail camera so you can see what I'm doing here. All right. So we're going to do 2 of those, and we're going to do 1/2 ounce of sweeteners. Now, here's the interesting thing about toddies. Depending on where you're from, they kind of change up what goes in them. Typically, it's honey, but you can use agave syrup. You can use maple syrup, which I think I'm going to do today. You can also just use good old-fashioned simple syrup. So, but why would you when you could put maple in there? Now, this is a dark maple, so we're going to start real small. We're going to do about 1/4 of a cup. I'm sorry, 1/4 of an ounce. 1/4 of a cup. Whew. Talk about sweet. That would be insane. Actually, I think I dropped a little bit of that, so we're going to pour just a drop in there. All right, I think my paper towel roll has gone off into the background. Move that up here. All right. So we've got our sugar, we've got our bourbon, and now we're gonna do what I like to do, which is do just a couple, like probably 1 or 2 dashes of Angostura bitters in there. That's 2. And I'm gonna add just about 1/4 to a 1/2 ounce of lemon juice. Again, this is not typical. I actually looked to see if there was a name for this, if like this variant was called something. I couldn't find it. Let me know if you know it or if you actually drink these. Let's do a 1/2 because I think the lemon would be really good for me. So we're going to drop that in. Now, in an effort to not shock this glass, if you're not aware, pouring hot liquid into a cold container can shock it and cause a thermal reaction that basically will explode glass. It's pretty crazy. So we're going to drop in a little bit, and I'm just going to stir as I go. Oh, but first, one of the things I like to do, just drop in about 3 or 4 cloves. I've got, as you can see here, I've got some cloves and cinnamon sticks. So we're going to drop 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I'm just going to do this little cinnamon stick right there. And let's go ahead and slowly stir and pour our hot water so that this glass kind of gets accustomed to the heat. Now for me, I don't actually know what the ounces of water is I'm using. I could tell you in just a second. But I've got it at home pretty much down to a science. The container I use is probably about 10. It's probably about 12 ounces total. So if we had 2 ounces of bourbon and we had 1/2 and 1/4, you're talking about 3. You're talking probably 8 to 9 ounces of water for a good ratio. But honestly, just more is less. Pour in a little bit, taste it. If it's too stiff, just kick it back a little bit and add a little more water. So we're gonna take this orange. We're gonna set this over here to the side for a second, and we're gonna peel this orange. Now I want to use this for both dishes. So I'm going to try to get as much as I can off of this thing. I actually have like about 1,000 of these, so I don't know why I'm being stingy, but here we are. All right, we'll go ahead and peel that off. Let's go the other way. All right. So we're going to take about that much of this. We're going to set the rest to the side. And what I want to do is I want to actually twist this over my glass. What this is going to do is kind of help release some of those orange oils into the actual drink. And then I'm just going to drop that in. Give that a quick stir. And let's see how we did. All right. I'll be honest, it's not crazy hot. I did boil this water a little bit in advance, hoping it would come down in heat. But it's actually perfect sipping temperature. It's really light. It's not too heavy. I feel like if you wanted to, you could throw in a little more bourbon. You could go 3 ounces instead of 2. So again, for me, that was 2 ounces of bourbon, 3 if you want. About a 1/4 to a 1/2 an ounce of maple syrup or your sweetener of choice. 1/2 an ounce of lemon juice, some clove, cinnamon, and an orange or lemon twist if you've got it. It's really refreshing. It's super light. I'm going to go ahead and set this to the side and just sip on this and give my throat something to enjoy while we go through the Amaretto Sour next. Cheers, everyone. I hope you guys have a delicious beverage in hand. If I could dink it with you, I sure would. But until then, cheers. All right, so we're gonna leave that right there. Tidy up a bit. Which, if you've seen multiple of these, if you've seen multiple of these videos, if you're like me, every time I see these, or even as I'm talking, I think about what I'm saying, and I realize that I have some pretty funny little tics. I say I'll write a lot. I say I tidy up constantly. It makes me laugh. Nothing makes you more aware of your little odd behaviors than watching yourself back on camera day after day. So, all right, let's jump into our next drink. All right, so for this, we're gonna take a shaker, and we're gonna do something a little different. We're gonna put our whiskey and our amaretto off to the side, so I'm gonna move those over here. And we're gonna go ahead and try the experiment with the aquafaba right now. So let's take a quick look at our show notes. All right. I'm gonna do about a quarter ounce. Let's switch over to our details. I'm gonna just try about 1, 2, 3, 4. That's about a quarter of an ounce. Let's take it up a bit to about 3/4. All right, so those 3/4 of an ounce is going in the shaker of our aquafaba chickpea juice, or we're gonna try it with kidney beans. Sounds crazy. We'll see. All right. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of sugar to this. And I'm going to use regular simple syrup. And we're going to do about 1/4 ounce. Oh, let's take the top off. Right, so just 1/4 ounce, because amaretto is already sweet enough as it is. No need to get the onset of diabetes too soon. All right. Now, we're going to take 1 ice cube. And we're going to take 1 ice cube and we're going to do a quick shake. With egg white, you can do what's called a dry shake. You could actually do it with all your ingredients in the shaker, but you're actually going to just try to get a foam. The reason you don't want too much ice is the ice will thin down the aquafaba or the egg white, and will keep it from really frothing up and giving you that body that you really want. Little tweak or a cheat around that, and I'll show you real quick. This is gum syrup. Gum syrup has a natural gum in it, and it actually adds a thick body. You could also do a twist on an amaretto where you add a little bit of pineapple juice. Both gum syrup and pineapple juice will add a little bit of body and foam. But if you want to stay true to the Amaretto Sour as it is, we're going to do it the way we're doing it now. The only reason I'm using 1 ice cube, and it'd really be better with a big ice cube, but I don't have any, is we're just going to use that 1 ice cube as an agitator, but really try to get it out of there as quick as possible. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and throw that in. And we're just going to give that a quick little shake. You can kind of hear it. When, I don't know if we'll hear it with the aquafaba, but with egg white, you can hear the density in the shaker go down. Kind of hear it a little bit. Let's go ahead and take that out. It really didn't do much for us. I'm not super impressed in terms of foam. Let's take that ice cube out. Let's give it an even more aggressive shake. And I can definitely smell those red kidney beans. So I think we're going to ditch this and just go with maybe some gum syrup instead. For those of you at home, just use an egg white. Half or whole, just depends on how much body and foam you want. All right, clean this out. Doesn't smell like kidney beans, so that's a good sign. But hey, we tried it. Now we know. And rinse off our bar spoon. And shut off our water. All right, grab my napkin real quick. All right, so let's go ahead and start over. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna make the whole thing in the shaker as is. But first we're gonna be using our sort of makeshift coupe glass. Steve and Jenna Henderson, thank you. All right, and we're gonna throw a little bit of our ice in our glass, and we're gonna chill it down because we're fancy AF. So just set that glass to the side and start letting it cool down because we want to really minimize the amount of ice in this, just to keep it kind of rich and frothy. All right, so let's go down the list. We're gonna do 1.5 of amaretto. So we're gonna do a little more, and we're gonna do a half. And of course, as far as I'm concerned, I've never been a real bartender. If you like the drink the way you make it, if you want more sugar, more amaretto, you just want a glass of whiskey, whatever makes you happy, drink that. Okay, so we did 1.5 of those, and we're gonna do 7.5. That's 3/4 of an ounce of our Bullet rye whiskey. And I'm gonna, ooh, that was a little too much. We'll just throw a little in there. All right. See that? Improvise. Let's give that a stir. All right, cheers, sip break. It's so good. Like, it's better. The cinnamon has been sitting in there long enough that it's actually starting to really infuse the drink. Like, the first sip I took was good. That's way better. If I wasn't doing the live stream, I probably would have let the water be at boiling, poured that, because this is probably a good 20 to 25 degrees lower, like probably more towards like a green tea temperature. But yeah, so this was probably about 20 to 25 degrees under boiling. So it's starting to cool down. It's still warm. It's a really good drinkable temperature right now. But if I had done it hot, it probably would have pulled more flavors out of the clove and the cinnamon and a little sooner so that you'd have more drinking time while it's hot. But that's just one of the little quirks of trying to do this live. All right, so we did our 2 spirits. Now we're going to jump over and we're going to do our 0.25 of gome syrup. And we're just going to shake the living hell out of this to try to get some foam out of that gome syrup. It's not going to be as rich and frothy of a head as like, say, an egg white would be, or even aquafaba, but it's better than nothing. And it'll definitely at least help give you that rich, creamy amaretto, like, sour taste. All right, so the only things left for this is going to be our lemon, which I have over here. And we're going to do 1 whole ounce of lemon, throw that in the shaker. And we should try this with a dry shake first, just see what happens. If you're not familiar, dry shake, again, no ice. Let's grab our tissue. All right. I think this is probably cool enough that it's going to still contract enough to give us a seal, since we did at least do that test in there. I'm not going to risk it and do a one-hand shake because with no ice, it'd be a little risky. All right, let's crack that open and see how it looks. Yeah, we've got a little bit of a head in there. Let's see if it'll last. We're going to let it sit for a second and see if that doesn't just dilute all the way back down. And if it does, what we'll do is we'll throw in some ice, chill it down even more, and toss it in anyways. But for now, let's see. If you're doing an Amaretto Sour at home with egg white, you would want to do this step. Let it rest. Let the bubbles kind of work their way to the surface so that when you then go to pour it, your strainer will help break those up and you'll end up with a nice, clean-looking foam at the top of your drink. All right, so let's see. Before I move forward, let's talk a little bit about the Amaretto Sour and Amaretto itself. If you guys aren't aware, Amaretto is an Italian liqueur. It was originally made with bitter almonds. In fact, that's where the name Amaretto comes from. Amaretto literally means little bitter. It's nowadays made with a lot of other things, not just almonds. In fact, most of the time it's like apricot pits, different stones from different fruits like peaches. They all have a chemical, which my show notes has. You would not believe how much I write before I do these things. Oh, show notes. Where are you at? Oh gosh. Nope, can't find it. Anyways, I'll look over them later and give you guys the official name. But anyways, there's a chemical inside of the almond. That same molecule is in other things like the stone pits of different fruits. So they don't actually need the almond to get that almond flavor because it's not actually inherent to the almond itself. So, anyways, almond. The actual amaretto is pretty old. There's some different myths and legends, and the actual origins are pretty unclear for the liqueur itself. The legend that I'm aware of is I think it was 1525, and a church in Saronno in Italy commissioned an artist who was actually an apprentice of Leonardo da Vinci, whose name was Bernardino Luini, I think was his name. Hopefully I got that right. But anyways, Luini was commissioned by a church in Saronno to paint frescoes on the ceiling of this new church they were building. And he was looking for a model for a Madonna painting that he was going to do. And they put him in touch and connected him with a widowed innkeeper. And the two fell in love, and as a sort of gift of affection, it's said that she concocted this liqueur from scratch because she didn't have a lot and she wanted to do something. And she took brandy and she took the kernels of apricot and bitter almond and made this sort of homemade liqueur. And that was the gift that she gave to him, and then kind of set in place this love of amaretto. So that's the myth of where it comes from. Nobody really knows, but there you have it. All right, so looking in our shaker, I see that we pretty much don't have any foam left. So I'm going to go ahead and throw just a tiny bit of ice in there, just to chill it down, and then we're going to shake and serve real quick. Right, that's probably plenty. All right. Let's go ahead and toss it up. Let's go into our detail shot. And there you go. So, something I think could have actually used for this one, now that I'm looking at it, a double strain. A double strain would have just helped take a little bit of the ice chips out of there and kept it from diluting too much. So using an actual fine mesh strainer would have been a good idea. So we're just going to put in a couple drops. We really don't want to flavor this too much. We just want to drop it in. It doesn't work quite as nice when you don't actually have a nice heady foam. But what we can do, and I'll bring this over for you, is we can go, and if you want, you can just take a little toothpick and do some designs in there. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that. Kind of like you would in a latte or something. All right. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our orange peel. I'm gonna cut that in half. These are actually cutie or clementine peels. I'm gonna twist that right over our drink and then drop that in. All right. Amaretto Sour. Cheers. I don't know about you guys. I love amaretto. It's one of my favorite flavors. I used to drink it as a kid growing up. I'd always want amaretto creamer for my coffee. I love this stuff. The Amaretto Sour is close to my heart. A really good friend of mine, Chelsea Beller, actually was the one who showed me how to make not just this, but also a Pisco Sour long time ago. So yeah, definitely a very special place in my heart for this drink. And like I said, you wouldn't even know that there's bourbon in there necessarily unless you're just looking for it or a very, very keen taster. It's really impressive how much just that little 0.75 ounces of bourbon really helps thin down the amaretto, but also push it to the top, because I don't taste a ton of lemon. I really don't taste all the bitters. Everything is just lifting up the amaretto, but it's doing so in a way that really like makes everything very smooth and uniform. It's not an evolving drink by any form. It does definitely have some stages. There's a beginning, middle, and end, but it's all levels of amaretto and sour. So it's not like you're getting this crazy dimensional drink, but it's bright, it's refreshing, it's a little creamy, and that's without egg white. Of course, this would be a much different drink with egg white. Let me know what you guys think. Maybe try it this way. Try it with just simple or using chickpea juice, aquafaba, about maybe 0.25 to 0.5 ounces. So I'd love to hear what you think about if you make one, and love to hear more about what it is you like about it. So let's switch this out. I'm gonna grab my hot toddy and give this a sip. I'm gonna take a second and read through the comments. One of these days I'll have a confidence monitor right here so that I can see your guys' comments as I talk to you, but limited resources working from my house and what I have. But let's take a look real quick. I'll leave this here for you guys to look at. Cool. All right. No major questions. At least I didn't see any at the top. If I missed some earlier, I apologize. But glad to see that you guys are enjoying the content. As always, I usually make about 2 drinks and then I do something kind of crazy and experimental. So let's jump into it. This is the portion where I really encourage you guys to jump in the comment section and let me know what sounds amazing to you. What do you want to see me try? I think our last one was just a challenge. It was like absinthe. Use absinthe, or in my case, I used herbazan, which is very similar. I'm open to it. Throw me a bunch of comments. We're going to give it about 30 seconds to a minute, and then we'll see what I can do with that. I definitely know there's a delay in when I talk to you guys and when you see it, so I may need to give it a little longer. So until then, I'll probably talk a little bit more about some of the drinks. I know I didn't really touch on it, but the toddy, for those of you who aren't aware, but the hot toddy is also an older drink, but not nearly as old as amaretto itself. Interesting thing about the word toddy is there's a big discrepancy between its origin. A lot of people think that it is actually an Indian drink, and it's made from I believe it's hot steeped spices and herbs and all that. And the word for it is literally toddy. But there's some debate. There was I'll probably butcher his name, but there was a physician, an Irish-born physician in the 1800s, whose name I can't remember, but his last name was Todd. And Dr. Todd apparently prescribed hot whiskey, lemon, and some other types of spices as a regular tincture for colds. I'm kind of inclined to believe that it was the Indian origin, just because when you think about those kinds of tinctures, we talked about cachaça and where it comes from in one of our previous live streams, and they have a very similar thing. It was a bunch of, it was like garlic and cachaça, sugar, lime, or lemon. So it's like a lot of people had that idea. I'm gonna wage it was probably from India. All right, let's throw these back real quick. All right, start cleaning up a little bit. Hopefully by then I'm gonna rinse these cups, and by then hopefully you guys have given me some suggestions on what we could make next. Let's run our water. All right, let's drop these in. Put that over here. Let's move our muddler out of the way. We're not going to need it this week, at least today. All right, let's take a look at the comment section over here. All right, make something with tea. Sore throat. So we want another toddy alternative. Oh, speaking of which, speaking of alternatives, let's talk about this Amaretto Sour. Let's take a quick look over here. And I believe this is Sandman Fine Ruby Port. Port's a very, very sweet dessert or digestive wine. Let's pour a little bit of this out and see what it looks like. Let's give it a little taste too. I've had this bottle for a little bit, and I don't know if it's still really fresh enough. Tastes fine. It's, one of the things that you can do, actually, we'll just use what I poured out, and I'll go over to our detail camera real quick. Is you can actually take this bar spoon and a little bit of port, and you want to get that spoon really close to the top and just move it around and float that port over the top. And this is an entirely different drink. You have just now made a Manhattan Sour. It's crazy how many variants, not only on the Amaretto Sour there are, but also on sours in general. I don't think a lot of people realize, but all it really takes to constitute as a sour is that you have a liquor, a citrus like lime or lemon, and sugar. Those are really the only strict definitions. Now, I'm sure a lot of mixologists and aficionados will come screaming that that's not true, but it really is like the definition of a sour. That's what it takes. There are a lot of famous sours. A daiquiri is a sour. Margaritas. There's gin sours, whiskey sours. I mean, literally all you have to do is just throw lemon juice and sugar in it, and you call it whatever you want to call it, but it's a sour. It's one of the most, I think, under-realized groups of drinks. I mean, I think being a tiki file myself, you could constitute a lot of tiki drinks as sours. There are a lot of tiki drinks that add way more than all that, but some of the basics, things like the Ancient Mariner or Navy Grog, those are essentially just rum, sugar, lime. I mean, that's a sour. Pretty good. That port adds a little more sweetness, which I'm glad I didn't put too much sugar in there. And it does help also kind of like add just a little bit of almost like a savory richness to the sweet amaretto. It's kind of hard to explain. All right, so we talked about doing a different version or something else that would help with the throat of a toddy. Now, really, I feel like if it's hot and with some spirit in there, it's probably going to be pretty good. Tea is a common one. I know there's some names for some specific toddies that use tea, and in fact, some of them are actually cold. They use like Earl Greys and other like typical black teas that you would find at the store. Let's think, what could we do that would incorporate tea and perhaps heat and maybe something that's not bourbon? I don't know. That could be tricky. Rum might be a little too aggressive. Gin might be a little too obtrusive. Vodka might be a waste of time. Not sure what else we could try. Let's take a look. I know you could do a red wine, kind of like you could do almost like a glühwein or what's the other word for glühwein? Mulled wine. That might be another one, but mulled wine is very, very rich and often super sweet, which you don't want a ton of sugar when you have a sore throat, because that sugar can fuel bacteria. You really want to keep it to citrus heat. That sugar is really just there to make the citrus more palpable. Let's take a look at our back shelf. I have actually seen people try to do amaretto toddies. Maybe we could try that. That could be super interesting. Let's think about the flavor of amaretto. Let's pull out our bottle again. And let's just kind of take a quick smell check. And So you've got sweetness. You have nuttiness. You have slight fruitiness. Okay, so fruits, nuts, sweet. What kind of a tea is going to go well with that? Definitely not a green tea for me. I think it's definitely got to be black. Let's think. I'm not a huge fan of herbal teas, so I would shy away from that personally, but if that's your thing, by all means, go for it. Let's think. Let's think about a black tea that has maybe something with bergamot. I know that's not everybody's cup of tea, pun intended, but I really enjoy like Earl Grey. Could be great because it's got lots of bergamot in it. Why don't we go ahead and heat up this kettle and we'll get some tea going. And from there, we'll make a Amaretto Earl Grey Hot Toddy. That sounds great. Let's try that. So give me about 5 to 10 seconds. Let me throw this water back on for a boil and grab our tea. And we'll talk a little bit more about what other ingredients we could potentially put inside of this hot toddy. All right, and we're back. I have us a little clear. This is pretty cool. It's from Bodum. It's a clear glass tea diffuser, and this TWG tea is my favorite Earl Grey. This stuff is incredible. My mom gave this to me, and she was like, "Oh, I don't like Earl Grey," and I'm like, it's the best thing it's so good. Again, if bergamot and other like kind of floral notes are not your thing, maybe go for just an English breakfast or Irish breakfast tea. Just a mild like black breakfast tea would be, I think, just as good if you want to take away some of this. But this is for me, so that's what we're gonna do. All right. While that's going, let's think about what we're gonna do. We're gonna need a mug, and we're gonna make this straight in there. There's no shaking. So maybe we'll actually end up using our Bodum clear glass little tumbler here. That sounds good. I think there's no reason we shouldn't use one more piece of orange. We've got Luxardo, which is going to be a little sweet. We're going to have our Earl Grey. So let's think about this. Something that we haven't done already. We've used a lot of things like whiskey. We've used maple sugar now, or maple syrup. We've done simple. I have other things, but I'm trying to think of things that ultimately you guys might have or have easy access to. I love pimento dram, though I don't think that that's going to be something that would work well here. It's very powerful, and with Earl Grey and Amaretto, that's a lot going on in one cup. So on that note, we want something simple that's going to underscore that. I think lemon juice is a great option, but maybe it's not the only option. Maybe we could look at something along the lines of a small amount of pineapple juice, or maybe even a tiny bit of clementine orange. In fact, the more I think about it, I think let's give this clementine orange idea a try. Let me pull out my juicer real quick. Right. So, got us a really simple juicer. We're gonna take, just to not be wasteful, we're gonna take our little cutie here. We're gonna cut it in half. And we're going to go ahead and give this a quick juice. You'd think I planned this, but I didn't. I spend most of the time fussing with the cameras and looking up historical research on the ingredients. Some of it I already know, some of it I knew a little, Some things I had no idea. I had no idea about the story of was it Bernardino Luini? I'm pretty sure that's his name. I could look it up. I have my notes over here. Yeah, nailed it. All right, let's give this a quick smell. You know, if you haven't tuned in before, you'll notice I do this a lot. I smell all my ingredients before I throw them in because your nose is going to be your first stop in telling you if you're on the wrong track. So we're going to get a little light citrus and a little sweet. I think what we're going to do is we're going to start with our tea. We're going to start with our We're going to start with our tea. We're going to start with our amaretto, and then we're going to add our juice and then anything else after that, just so we have room to tweak more juice, a sort of syrup maybe, but let's start there. So I think our water should probably be boiled. Let me go grab that real quick. And let's switch over to our detail camera for you guys. And I'm back. All right, so let's go ahead and throw in just enough of, let's go ahead and dry off this spoon. And we're gonna add just enough of this TWG Earl Grey Buddha. We're gonna do 3 of these. 3 level, 1, 2, and maybe a third one that's kind of hefty. All right. We like them chunky. Oh, there's so much garbage. All right. Now, let's go ahead and get our tea steeping, and let's set a timer for about 3 minutes, maybe about 2:45 to 3 minutes. When it comes to teas, temperature and time is super, super important. A lot of people say they don't like green tea, and that's just because they had green tea that was steeped at boiling temperature for way too long, and again, it gets a very metallic taste, and that comes from the tannins that are overly released when over steeping. So in this instance, we're using Earl Grey. We set it to an Earl Grey temperature, and we're gonna let it steep for approximately 3 minutes. While we do that, in our shaker, we're going to get the other ingredients mixed, and then we'll add that when the time is up, so we're not just sitting here talking about what your favorite color is and what kind of music you like. All right, we're going to do 2 ounces of Luxardo Amaretto. There we go. And let's do 1 ounce of orange juice, because this orange juice is not super potent, so we'll kind of treat it similar to an Amaretto Sour's amount, even though we're doing a toddy. All right, let's give that a little stir. Now you could use Tropicana or whatever. I actually have just regular Tropicana juice, but I just thought this might be interesting since I had it lying around. It's good. I actually think we could do more. Let's see how much more of this orange juice I'm going to throw in. Oh, about 1 3/4 of an ounce of this sort of light clementine or cutie juice. If you're using orange juice, I might recommend scaling it back, especially if it's canned like bottled juice. It's going to be a little more tart because they throw citric acid in it as a preservative. Okay. All right, let's give that a taste. Yeah, I like that. It does have a little bit of a medicine taste to it right now. So let's think about how we might be able to get rid of that. Let's see. That medicine taste is probably coming from the bitterness being brought forward by maybe when I juiced that clementine, some of the pith, that white part, got in there, so that could add a little bit of a bitter flavor. So let's just add a tiny bit of a syrup, and let's go back, or let's do this. Let's add just a touch of lemon. We're going to do a 1/4 ounce. 1/4 ounce lemon just to bring a little more acidity to the front, because we're about to throw in a little more sugar. So we're going to want to like balance that out. And I'm just doing 1/4 ounce of maple syrup. Let's give that a taste. See what we did. All right. Cheers. That's right on. You don't even know there's lemon in there, but that lemon helped really push the orange flavor up, and the sweetness just kind of helped cut out any of the tartness so we didn't know we were dealing with lemon. That's really good by itself. Like, really good. If you want to make an Amaretto Sour with a little bit of like half orange juice, half lemon juice, I recommend it. It's pretty good. All right, and we are just about up on our 3 minutes. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and pull our tea. And let's give this tea a little bit of a taste. Perfect. The flavor is nice and light. It's got that bergamot flavor, it's got that tea flavor. But it's not overly bitter. It's not overly hot. Again, we're going to be putting in a cool liquid. Let's do a dry shake just to kind of help express some of those juices that we have in here now. So we're going to take this. And when you dry shake, you really want to shake it vigorously because you need to, you don't have ice to act as your agitator. So you really just got to froth it up on the inside. And that's probably about good. 10 to 15 seconds is probably more than you need. Oh, so good. All right, let's toss this in. We're gonna do the same thing as we did before. We're gonna stir as we go, just so we don't shock the glass. A little bit at a time. In fact, I can tell you right now, there's too much liquid in here, so I'm gonna go ahead and just dump a little bit. I think I need a tiny bit more. All right, so let's do our stir. What all do we have here? Let's bring this closer so you guys can see. Boom, look at that. Measured like a champ. And let's skip the cinnamon. I don't think that's going to be as good for us, but let's throw some clove in there, 4 or 5. And we're going to take our orange slice, give it a little twist over the surface just to express those oils over the top. You can even rub the actual rim of the glass with the actual peel, which will help just kind of add a little more of the smell as you go in to take your first sip. And as we talked about in previous sessions, smell is the first and most important part of experiencing flavor. If you don't smell it, or if the smell is off-putting, the taste is good, you usually don't get past the front door. Let's give it a taste. That's pretty good. Where's my other one? It's definitely sweeter. It's definitely juicier. This has more of that low down, earthy, I'm home with a cold feel. This feels like a drink I would have on a late spring or early autumn night, sitting on the front porch as it's getting cold, and I just want something cool. I want something warm and refreshing, but I still want that touch of sweetness and flavor that I'm not necessarily getting from more of the tincture vibe of the original toddy. It's pretty good though. Let's go over what this was. This was Earl Grey tea. In this instance, you're probably talking 5 to 6 ounces, and then probably 4 ounces. I'm guessing this is about a 10-ounce container. So probably about 4 ounces of juice. So that was tea. That was 2 ounces of Luxardo. 2 ounces of the clementine juice, fresh. Probably cut that in half if you're using bottled orange juice. A quarter of an ounce of maple syrup. A quarter of an ounce of what was our last one? A quarter of an ounce of... Nah, it's gone. Anyways, garnish it with an orange twist and some clove, and it's pretty delicious. Orange juice, lemon juice, maple sugar, and our tea. And amaretto. So let's see. Let's throw one little thing of bitters in there because I'm a sucker for bitters. Just a little bit on the top. Let's see what that does. That might help put a little edge over the sweetness. Yeah, the bitters is actually really nice. Just a little bit. It's actually bringing the tea up and the sweetness down a little bit. I know I use bitters a lot, but it really is a bar catch-up. It really does a lot for different drinks in different ways. I think that's even better. So let's do that. I'm going to start posting the actual recipes I do in edited clips and in written format on things like Instagram and Facebook. So you don't have to rely on me having a brain fart in the middle of the stream. I'll make sure that it's written somewhere. Definitely leave me a comment if there's any drinks in particular you want to make sure come out first in terms of what sounded good and what you'd like to try. So with that being said, we have 1 minute. I don't know how this times out so perfectly every time. I do 2 drinks and then I make one up and here we are. It's like, I love it. Thank you again for joining me. I had a blast with you. Thanks for waiting while I gave my voice some time to catch up. Really happy I didn't cough once this whole time, so that's really exciting. And let me know, how does the video look? Does the video look better than the last few times? How's the audio? And what do you think of some of the drinks? Do you like this format? 2 standard drinks and 1 made-up cocktail? I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for spending your evenings with me. I really love having you guys here. The comment section was rearing and alive. I loved it. I started the stream and saw people talking. That makes me so excited. If you don't know me, I love community, I love people, and I love conversation. So the fact that while I'm here alone, I get to connect with you guys from a distance. I get to see community and conversation forming. It makes me super, super happy. So with that, I'm going to cut it off, and I hope you have a great night. Enjoy whatever cocktail you have in your hand, and I look forward to seeing you guys again. I will probably start doing these once every other day just to make sure I'm not like doing too much and also to give myself a break. So next one would be Friday at 6 o'clock. So look forward to seeing you then, 6 p.m. Eastern time, as always, here on YouTube. Have a good night.